Good afternoon. Getting right down to business here. We're doing it live, doing more at 4 weekday afternoons, right after the Guy Benson Show and just before the 790 KBC News Blitz. Mottek on Money, live on the air, 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at kbc.com. And the on-demand Mottek on Money podcast, kbc.com, Apple iTunes, YouTube, all of your favorite podcast platforms. Big breaking news impacting the financial markets here this afternoon. The stock market ended mixed today while holding on to gains that we've seen so far this month as investors took in President Trump's intensified threats against Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz by tonight. The major averages trimmed losses late this afternoon. We saw it happen trading after the Pakistani prime minister urged a 2-week extension to the president's self-imposed 8 p.m. Eastern time deadline for Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz and allow oil to flow through. The president shortly thereafter said he did agree to suspend attacks on Iran for 2 weeks, subject to the immediate reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, pointing to progress on a 10-point proposal from Tehran. The price of oil, which according to some indications at an all-time high today, up around $150 a barrel, has now slipped here this afternoon. We're watching oil futures climb for their third consecutive session today, settling at roughly $113. That is a new 52-week high. European and Asian refiners, though, are paying record-high prices of nearly $150 a barrel for some crude oil grades, exceeding prices for some futures, highlighting the worsening supply crisis from the U.S. war with Iran. We're following this very closely, this according to the Reuters news service. Russia and China vetoing a draft resolution before the UN Security Council aimed at compelling Iran to open the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S., meanwhile, conducted more than 50 strikes on military targets on Iran's Karg Island earlier today, according to U.S. authorities. I'll discuss the latest military moves with retired U.S. Marine Corps Lieutenant Colonel Hal Kempfer, retired U.S. Marine Corps intelligence officer, national security analyst, and host of the Strat podcast. Will be joining us live later this hour. The Dow came in for a closing loss today of 85 points. S&P 500 moved up 5, and the Nasdaq closed up 21. The volatility index slipping 7%. Price of gold today getting closer to $4,800 an ounce, and the crude oil futures at the moment slipping at after-hours trading. Keeping track of all of this breaking news, focused primarily on what's happening with gas and oil. Joining us live now is prominent oil analyst John Kilduff at Again Capital and CNBC contributor. Longtime contributor to this program, especially on big days like this. John Kilduff, thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
My pleasure, Frank. Great to be with you.
Great to have you with us here on this big day. Take it from the top and tell us what happened today with the oil apparently hitting a record high and now pulling back on this big breaking news this afternoon.
Frank, it was looking very dire most of the day today. You referenced the oil price climbing to where it did, over $115 a barrel for WTI, upwards of $140 in the spot markets around the world, all in the expectation of that this evening would be significant assault on Iran by the U.S. and Israel. There has been just a stunning development in the last hour or so, where the Pakistanis, as you referenced, have come across with a 2-week ceasefire proposal, which President Trump has apparently accepted. And we are seeing just a violent reaction. If you thought tonight was going to be violent in Iran, that the markets are having their own violent reaction right now. U.S. crude oil futures, WTI futures, are now back down to $94 a barrel. They're down 16% in overnight trading. There is a stunning rally going on right now in equity futures. S&P 500 futures are up materially on this. And it looks like, once again, we looks to have avoided really a worst case scenario. Now, there's a one big caveat in President Trump's acceptance of the proposal from Pakistan. He did make it contingent on Iran immediately opening the Strait of Hormuz for safe travel and safe passage of shipping interests. We're going to have to see if that comes to pass or not. I can tell you, if it doesn't, the whipsaw back higher for crude oil and back lower for stocks will be upon us. But I will tell you, we were trying to figure out what they were going to hit after today's action, because I can tell you there has been some significant strikes done today in Iran, in particular in the Iranians' petrochemical sector in the Pars field. You probably heard about that in the last week or two. That's where their big natural gas facility and fields are for Iran. That got hit. Karg Island got hit some more. So that's where Iran exports really all of its oil from via that island. So again, this is just a stunning turn of events, Frank, and the oil price. I talked about this with you before. There was a trap door under this market, under these prices. If there was any kind of a deal that could be reached here, one apparently has for now, and that's where we're at.
See it tonight, read about it tomorrow, but hear it now on Mottek on Money, live on the air with prominent oil analyst John Kilduff, and again, Capital and CNBC contributor on the breaking news that the president has agreed to suspend attacks on Iran for 2 weeks, subject to the immediate reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, where a lot of oil flows through that waterway, pointing to progress on a 10-point proposal from Tehran. Earlier, the president escalated his rhetoric toward Iran, threatening to wipe out the entirety of the country's civilization if Iran did not meet his demands by 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific time. But in the last less than an hour or so, the news came that the president has agreed to suspend attacks on Iran for 2 weeks. We are seeing, as you mentioned, John Kilduff, a reaction in the oil markets, price of oil coming down, the Bitcoin moving higher. We're seeing stock futures point higher. And let's see what else. The other big reaction we've seen leading up to all this, which people driving around Southern California notice most prominently, is that the price of diesel has hit a record high today once again. And that's been the case for the last couple of weeks now here in the L.A. area, $7.85. The average price now for diesel here in the L.A. area, $6.05 the average price for regular, and $6.43 the average price for premium. Given today's developments, what do you see ahead for gas prices in all this?
Yeah, that is just a stunning price for diesel fuel out in California, Frank. We're looking; it's eye-watering. This pullback in crude oil could see $2 to $3 off that per gallon price for diesel fuel somewhat quickly. We're not out of the woods yet. We talked about the challenges that the Saudis, Kuwaitis, Iraqis are going to have in revving up and getting themselves back to this pre-war production situation, but this definitely helps. I know there's another prominent oil analyst out there keeps saying that the futures markets aren't forward-looking, but they most certainly are. And by definition, they are. They're futures markets. And for this market to know and to realize that the strait is going to be opened if it comes to pass, and for this market to know that the supply squeeze that we've just been experiencing is going to be relieved, it is a boom. And the price retreat that you're seeing, this 16% retreat lower in oil prices here in the U.S., all is completely justified because there are a literal flotilla of filled, laden VLCC, the super tankers of oil that are ready to go, transit through the strait and get out to the customers, mostly in Asia, and that'll relieve the pressure on U.S. supplies and U.S. prices, Frank. This is huge.
Give us paint a picture for us of what's happening there approaching the Strait of Hormuz. You mentioned that flotilla, of course, during the pandemic days. People remember seeing the tremendous backup of freighters off the coast of Los Angeles and Long Beach when we had dealing with the pandemic days. Any count of how many tankers are waiting to go through there, and what's that going to look like?
It will look like it'll look like the tall ships are come to town out there in the Strait of Hormuz. There's literally 20 to 30 million barrels of crude oil waiting to be liberated from this siege, and we do expect that to be happening right away. I will tell you this, Frank, the other unanticipated bonus here, to the extent that President Trump works something out with the Iranians, is that Iranian oil will now flow freely into the market out through the strait, and also to the Chinese, who have been holding for years now oil from Iran that's been sanctioned in what we call bonded storage, sort of a limbo of supply, will be released as well. So we potentially have a real silver bullet here in the making in terms of a relief valve, in terms of additional supply on the market, readily available to global refiners, and again, particularly the ones out in Asia, because I'll tell you, Frank, it was starting to bite. You were hearing about shortages, rationing, various measures being taken out in Asia and Japan in particular leading the way, but some of the lesser countries in terms of trying to deal with this acute shortage of supplies. Because, again, that 20% of global oil supplies that you hear about passing through the Strait, most of it goes to Asia, and they have already been suffering, and they've been paying prices way higher. I know $8 for nearly $8 for diesel fuel in California is high. They're paying $12, $15 a gallon for it out that way. And then add on the currency translation with the surge we've been seeing in the dollar. It's a 1-2 punch for them. So if this holds, Frank, this will be the end very quickly of this high-price energy siege.
Any assessment of damage as missiles have been flying throughout the region, hitting various facilities? You noted some of them already, but today the U.S. Taking aim at Iran's Karg Island, which when the Iraq-Iran war was going on, we used to hear all about Karg Island getting hit periodically. But any damage assessment there, and any other important installations that have been hit in all this that could potentially elevate the price of oil from where it's been?
Well, we will have to see what the damage assessment is really in the whole region. Certainly, the UAE was particularly hard hit. Global liquefied natural gas supplies are going to take some time to rebound. This could be a real problem again for Europe and the upcoming winter if some of that can't be rectified. There has been strikes across the region by Iran. It's just been a tinderbox and spectacular pictures, Frank. I do not think we will not be getting back to the full output that we saw before the war for months, maybe not until the end of the year. So that surplus, that glut we have been talking about going into the beginning of this year, that remains off the table, and I don't see prices getting back down much below really $85 a barrel anytime soon. We've had a remarkable pullback right now in overnight trading, getting back down to 94. To the extent we can assess and see, how durable and how much damage truly was been done to the Saudi infrastructure, to the Kuwait infrastructure, and the others in the region, we won't know. But that's all this market can give right now on sort of on a headline like this. But as we dig into it and we can see those supplies back on the market, that price should continue to head lower rather quickly. But there's going to be a sticking point. We are going to end up being higher for a while, good up to a year before we can get back to the glut situation that we were in. That was, bringing sub $2 a gallon gasoline to many places here in the United States.
On there live with oil analyst John Kilduff, and again, Capital and CNBC contributor, recapping the top story. President Trump agreeing to suspend attacks on Iran for 2 weeks, subject to the immediate reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. Earlier, the president had threatened to wipe out the entirety of Iran's civilization if Iran did not meet his demands by tonight. And if you have your computer screen up there, John, give us the latest on the oil prices as they've come down since this announcement came through.
Yes, Frank. Right now we're literally trading at $94.65 a barrel. That's down $18 from today's settlement, or 16%. Keep in mind, these same prices were as high as $115 a barrel earlier today, and we are now we're below 95. So this is just an incredible pullback, an incredible, like I said, violent reaction to this significant breaking news, particularly, and it'll be another leg lower here, Frank. We will be back below $90 a barrel if there's any word from the Iranians officially that they agree to open the strait. You'll see that immediately. I could see S&P 500 futures go limit up if the Iranians say that they're opening the strait here for this 2-week period, because it's going to pretend a greater and more durable ceasefire, if not settlement of this whole thing, very quickly. So it's been an amazing job. I have to say, you were asking about Karg Island a moment ago. Once again, the U.S. military strikes on Karg were surgical. best we could tell from some of the imagery and other reports we were getting, none of the oil infrastructure on Karg was impacted by these strikes. It was all military-based, all military-driven. That will mean Iran itself, will be able to export 1.5 to 2 million barrels a day almost immediately, with the other countries in the region also ramping up here. So this is a huge relief on supply, and that's why you're seeing WTI oil prices back below $95 a barrel after approaching, like I said, 117, 120 at points in time overnight, last night into today.
All right, so we've touched on what this means to consumers, hopefully lower prices at some point, especially diesel, which is at a record high at the moment in Los Angeles, $7.85. From an investment standpoint, obviously still a lot of wild cards here, and this 2-week suspension on attacks on Iran just being announced, and whether it holds and how this is all going to play out remains to be seen. But from an investment standpoint, give us your thoughts.
Well, Frank, this is amazing for the U.S. economy. I was getting quite concerned that this was going to really impact GDP, potentially tip us into a recession. Whenever we've had a recession over the decades here, a spike in oil prices to the upside has been a part of it. There's been other factors, but that's certainly been a part of it. The airlines have been struggling. The truckers have been struggling with this. You were going to start to see higher prices at the grocery store almost immediately, especially in the produce section. Look, consumer spending in the U.S. is 2/3 of the economy. So nobody really could be affording this sudden tax hike effectively, where dollars are being directed into the gas tank. So the overall stock market is rallying now on this news. Everything is going to be bought up. This is really going to rescue the transport sector, the airlines. The oil companies certainly will take a hit to a degree, especially the ones that are purely exploration and production, obviously taking oil out of the ground. But I will tell you, this is good for the petrochemical sector of the petroleum complex, and this is also good for the refining sector. They do better when oil prices are lower or going down, because they can maintain for a little while anyway these higher refined product prices. So overall, this is a tremendous boon. Again, for the stock market, for the economy. And I'll tell you, we were reaching the breaking point here, Frank. So I think that this is just in time result, a good one for investors and for the stock market writ large.
Prominent oil analyst John Kilduff at Gun Capital and CNBC contributor, longtime contributor to this program. John, thank you very, very much for taking the call on one of the biggest days ever in the oil business. Appreciate it so very much, and we'll keep an open line to you and follow this closely with you. Thank you again very, very much for joining us here today.
My pleasure, Frank. Thank you.
Thank you very much. 790 KABC.
The expectation and the norm is to win, and that is what we will be able to do here. I believe in the power of UCLA.
It's a new day for UCLA football with new head coach Bob Chesney taking charge, and we need you to be a part of it. The right man is at the helm in Westwood, and the time is now for you to put your support behind the Bruins. UCLA football is ready to win, and we can't wait to see you this fall. Visit UCLABruins.com/tickets for more info on how to secure your seats for the 2026 season. Go Bruins!
Hey there, I'm Paula Pan. I help people make the smartest money decisions possible.
Do not ever worry about your salary. You need enough to make sure that you aren't in a bad financial position. Once you have that, your salary becomes moot. What matters from that point forward, upside gains. Any type of ownership stake or ownership potential, that's the money.
Remember, you can afford anything, just not everything. Afford anything. Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
The countdown is on for the 2026 NFL Draft presented by Bud Light. Catch all 7 rounds 3 days live from Pittsburgh, April 23rd through 25th. Watch every pick live on NFL Network, ESPN, and ABC. NFL Network is also streaming with NFL Plus. It all starts Thursday, April 23rd at 8 p.m. Eastern. Visit NFL.com/draft for more information. Subscription required for NFL Plus. Visit plus.nfl.com for terms.
Mottek Money continues, 790 KABC. The breaking news, President Trump agreeing to suspend attacks on Iran for 2 weeks, subject to the immediate reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. Earlier, the president had escalated his rhetoric toward Iran, threatening to wipe out the entirety of Iran's civilization if Iran did not meet his demands by tonight. We did see the announcement a little while ago that that looks like there's a 2-week suspension of the attacks on Iran. Major averages trimmed losses already late in the afternoon after the Pakistani prime minister urged a 2-week extension to the president's self-imposed 8 p.m. Eastern Time deadline for Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, the critical choke point for shipping and tanker traffic in the Persian Gulf. We did see the stock market end the day mixed and well off the lows of the day. The Dow down 85 points at the close today. The S&P 500 up 5, the Nasdaq up 21, and stock futures are popping by about 300. S&P stock futures higher here in after-hours trading in reaction to the breaking news we got just in the last hour or so. The price of oil, meanwhile, has pulled back below $95 a barrel after moving well above $100 earlier, as we just heard from prominent oil industry analyst John Kilduff. The price of gold is getting a pop, up more than $100 now, back to $4,791 and change. Cryptos, too, rallying right now. A Bitcoin up about 2,000, just shy of 71,000. ETH, Ethereum, just below 2,200, and Doge at the moment at 9 cents. We'll talk about the latest military moves in the Persian Gulf today. Colonel Hal Kemper will be with us, retired U.S. Marine Corps Lieutenant Colonel, will be giving us his assessment on the military action today. The U.S. conducted more than 50 strikes on military targets on Iran's Karg Island earlier today, and other military action we're following. And Colonel Kemper will be joining us live coming up in the next half hour to talk about that. Well, that partial government shutdown continues. The Department of Homeland Security has been shut down for more than 50 days now, and yet the end still seems to be days away. Congressional leaders announced recently they had come up with a deal. The shutdown might not end until Congress comes back from a scheduled 2-week recess on April 14th. In the meantime, the tax filing deadline is coming up on April 15th, April marking the home stretch for taxpayers filing their taxes ahead of the April 15th deadline, and now many are seeing firsthand how tax policy is impacting their bottom line. Keeping track of all of this, and with a ringside seat in Washington, Grover Norquist joins us live now, the president of Americans for Tax Reform. Grover, thank you very much for taking the call here today.
Oh, absolutely. Good to be with you.
Likewise, and of course, we'll be following the Iran story closely, as we did with our guest, John Kilduff, a few moments ago. And Lieutenant Colonel Hal Kemper, retired Marine Corps Lieutenant Colonel, will be joining us here very, very shortly. I'm sure everyone in Washington has been riveted to that breaking news that there's going to be a 2-week extension now to possible attacks by the U.S. After President Trump had threatened to wipe out Iran's civilization if it had not agreed to his demands by tonight. But the announcement in the last hour or so is that the president has agreed to suspend attacks on Iran for 2 weeks, subject to the immediate reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. Any initial reaction you're picking up there in Washington to that big news as well?
No, nothing particularly new. One assumed that this was to get the negotiations going, and perhaps it did.
Yeah. All right, let's get back to the news at hand here with the partial government shutdown continuing. Any movement there? Does it look like April 14th is the day when Congress returns and finally things will be? Will they finally vote on that?
Yeah, I think we're going to see a reconciliation package which can pass with a simple majority in the House and a simple majority in the Senate, and that will fund the Homeland Security, and that'll be about it. And then there should be 2 more pieces of legislation between now and the end of the year, and that is probably funding on some of the stuff about rebuilding some of America's defense weaponry that got used up so far. But nothing big. I'm just not seeing a chance for much in the way of tax reduction between now and November or now and January, except for what the president could do through a rulemaking in Treasury to end the taxation of inflation when you tax capital gains. That the inflation gains would not be taxed, That's something that could be done by executive order. The president, by rulemaking, the president has said so publicly that he sees that he has that ability, as does the Treasury Secretary, as do the lawyers that we've worked with over the last 20 years. So that would be the one big thing that could happen on tax policy at the federal level. At the state level, lots of great stuff. People are busy reducing taxes at the state level. Red states are all cutting taxes, no red states raising taxes. Blue states, unfortunately, are moving in the wrong direction and threatening higher taxes on people's lifetime earnings in California. And you've seen the numbers that Hoover out, the Hoover Institute, where 30% of the money that they were hoping, of the wealth that some of the unions were hoping to grab and confiscate, has already moved out of the state. So if they do pass the bill, it may end up losing money for the state, not gaining it.
Right, and we're waiting to see if this so-called billionaires tax ends up on the ballot or not. So nervous time. In the meantime, as you mentioned, billionaires are strategically moving out of California to Texas, Florida, and other states where they're not going to be burdened with this confiscatory tax. That's the word that best describes it, right? Grover Norquist, if something like this were to happen, wealth basically being confiscated here in California.
Well, yes, and we've seen what happened when this was done in Europe. There were 12 states that passed a wealth tax. Now there are only 4 because the 8 looked at it and said this is just hemorrhaging talent and resources, and nobody wants to move a successful business into a place where they confiscate your wealth. The damage to California is not simply the people who leave. It is all of the 25-year-olds in Ohio and Wisconsin who 20 years ago, when they had $1 billion idea burning in their hands, they said, they would go to San Francisco to make it a reality and to create that wealth and hire people and start a startup in California. Now the last place that someone who thinks you can make $1 billion with a great idea you wouldn't want to be caught in California if you'd invented something worthwhile, because they steal some of it. So the damage is not just the people leaving, it's the people who don't move there now.
That is another big story. You're absolutely right. So the April 15th filing deadline is approaching. What's different this time around for those that have not yet put those papers together and gotten to the office there with the accountant? What's the most important thing people should know as they prepare their taxes here ahead of the April 15th deadline?
Yeah. The IRS has pointed out that there are a lot more refunds coming than usual. People did not understand the size and scope of the big, beautiful bill. There are a lot more tax reductions, and they started at the beginning of last year, January, a year ago. A lot of people might have assumed, because usually if they don't pass the tax bill until July, it doesn't take effect until July. But one of the things the Republicans wanted everybody to understand is we are going to reduce taxes, and we're going to cut taxes on people who invest. So don't wait to invest until the bill passes. Any investment you make, any expensing that you do in the first months of Trump's for a second term will be fully expensed, and that not everybody understood that. So there's a lot of people withheld more than they needed to, or allowed the government to withhold more than they needed to, and we're told that the amount and size, hundreds of billions of dollars will be flowing out to taxpayers in refunds that weren't expected. So that'll be cheerful. Plus, remember all those tariffs that were imposed, and the Supreme Court pointed out they were not properly imposed. That's about $250 billion flowing into the American people as well.
Anything else that we should know? People with kids or businesses. We've had the National Federation of Independent Business guy on the show recently, reminding us about a terrific tax benefit for small business this time around. Anything else that that people should know?
Well, starting, I think in June of this year, now you can set up your Trump account or at trumpaccounts.org, and you can put up to $5,000 for every child under the age of 18 into that account. If the child is born last year, this year, or the next 2 years, then he or she would be eligible for $1,000 from the government. But your employer can put money into your child's, and again, it's up to $5,000 a year. You can do it every year until the child turns 18, at which point that's an IRA, and that becomes theirs. So we're going to have millions of people turn 18 every year who will have had 4 or 5 years where they fully understand that this is my money in my comp account. This is my resources. I see it go up when the stock market goes up. I see it go down when the stock market goes down. They will have a better understanding of economics and what happens than most Democratic congressmen do in their 40s. And this will happen when they're 18, just before they vote, just before they begin to vote.
Terrific, Grover. Thank you very much for coming to the line here and getting closer to that April 15th deadline. I have a feeling we're going to have you on again between now and then. Grover Norquist, the president of Americans for Tax Reform, America's leading taxpayer advocate. Grover, it's always great to have you with us. Thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
Thank you. Take care.
790 KBC.
The NFL Draft, presented by Bud Light, is coming to Pittsburgh, and it's your chance to witness the future of the game for free from April 23rd to April 25th. Feel the energy of the NFL Draft. See the Vince Lombardi Trophy and Super Bowl rings. Meet NFL players and legends. Enjoy interactive games and live music performances, and be there as the future of the NFL takes center stage. The NFL Draft starts April 23rd. Register for free entry at NFL.com/draft access today.
Vince Colonnese is redefining news talk.
I'm Vince Colonnese, host of the Vince Podcast. I'm bringing you the truth beneath the headlines of all of the nation's top stories.
In-depth interviews.
We feature newsmaking interviews with the top guests on the whole planet. And I'll ask the questions you only dream of other interviewers asking.
And a front row seat to the most important conversations of the day.
It's a show with an obsessive focus on what's good for America. You are going to love Vince.
The Vince Show. Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
The expectation and the norm is to win, and that is what we will be able to do here. I believe in the power of UCLA.
It's a new day for UCLA football with new head coach Bob Chesney taking charge, and we need you to be a part of it. The right man is at the helm in Westwood, and the time is now for you to put your support behind the Bruins. UCLA football is ready to win, and we can't wait to see you this fall. Visit UCLABruins.com/tickets for more info on how to secure your seats for the 2026 season. Go Bruins!
Mottek on Money continues here, 790 KBC, the world and financial markets on pins and needles all day today, and the possibility that in about 10 minutes from now, Iran would be heavily bombed. But then came the breaking news just about an hour or so ago that President Trump said he agreed to suspend attacks on Iran tonight for 2 weeks, subject to the immediate reopening of the Strait of Hormuz in the Persian Gulf, pointing to progress in a 10-point proposal from Iran. Earlier, the president had escalated his comments toward Iran, threatening to wipe out the entirety of Iran's civilization if Iran did not meet his demands by tonight. Oil futures have come down dramatically after spiking earlier to, according to some measures, all-time highs. And the U.S. conducted more than 50 strikes today on military targets on Iran's Karg Island, according to various sources. Joining us live now is retired U.S. Marine Corps Lieutenant Colonel Hal Kempfer, retired U.S. Marine Corps intelligence officer, national security analyst, and host of the Strat podcast. Colonel, thank you very much for taking the call here. Give us your reaction to the latest dramatic developments.
Well, Frank, I mean, we went right to the wire, 2 hours before, but it was interesting. Earlier today, I was being asked about this, and I was kind of seeing it as about 50-50, which way this was going to go. And I had a feeling there was a lot that was being done behind the scenes. And obviously there was. And now we have this, 2 hours before we're supposed to start, this announcement that we're doing a 2-week pause. Of course, it's going to have a huge impact. It's oil prices we see right up front, but also with liquefied natural gas. And of course, the big one is with fertilizer, which is the one that no one pays that much close attention to, but a massive amount of global fertilizer comes out of the Persian Gulf, and it is planting season. And it was critical to get that fertilizer out. Now, one of the things we're going to see, the Iranians, as part of this agreement, have said they're going to reopen the strait. We're going to see if they can actually reopen the strait. We don't know how heavily sea mined the strait is. There could be major internationally recognized lanes, sea lanes in there that aren't usable. We're going to find that out, and then hopefully we'll see some sort of international coalition come in. And this is one of the prerequisites they've said. Particularly Japan has said this. If you have a ceasefire in place, we'll come in and bring our minesweepers in and help clear those lanes. Now they have the pretext wherein they can actually do that.
On there live with retired U.S. Marine Corps Lieutenant Colonel Hal Kemper. What's that going to look like? Will the Iranians cooperate in that effort, pointing out where the mines have been laid?
I certainly hope so. I mean, the obligation is that they're going to reopen the strait. You can't reopen the strait without telling us where you mined the strait, and we'll find out how extensive that mining is. Right now, we just don't know. What we do know is they rerouted shipping traffic to go up by Hormuz Island, and they were using that as kind of a gate pass, if you will. You had to go up there and pay a fee to get your ships through the strait, but they were taking it well north of the established sea lanes. And one of the questions has been, well, what did they do to those established sea lanes? Have they done something that's going to be difficult and time-consuming to clear out? And we're going to find out. But I will say this. If I was sitting in Tokyo, or I was sitting in Seoul, or if I was sitting anywhere in the European capital, and I was wanting to get the Persian Gulf open, and I wanted the political parameters by which I could send my escorts and my minesweepers down there, now they have it. The question is, can they get them in there quick enough? And will this 2-week ceasefire then lead to maybe another 2 weeks or a month, and maybe indefinite?
All right. What about today's strikes on Karg Island? Tell us what is on Karg Island, and tell us if you know what was hit there today. Apparently 50 targets hit.
50 targets. We hit them before and hit military targets on Karg Island. There have been reports that they've been reinforcing and rebuilding on Karg Island. My guess is that we went in and we said it was military targets, so we hit the same targets again. But it left Karg Island wide open for being seized. That's where 90% of the oil from Iran comes out of, is through the Karg Island. It's their crown jewel. It's also their Achilles heel, because it sits there in the Persian Gulf and it's easily attacked. We could have seized that, held that, controlled the oil that comes out of Iran, and basically starved the regime of any oil revenue, which would have eventually destroyed the regime itself by doing that. And I think the regime recognized today, and the timing was specifically there to make it very clear to them that they could not hold that island, that whatever thought they had was impossible, that we could seize it at any time. And of course, their other place, Lasco Island, or not Lasco port down on the Gulf of Oman, is wide open, so we could hit that at any time. So they were basically, it was a maximum pressure campaign against Tehran into the thinking process to make them realize that they really didn't have a choice. They needed to go into a ceasefire.
And what is the situation with Israel at the moment? There was one report just minutes ago, actually, that said Iran launched a ballistic missile attack on central Israel right after targeting the south. So we're watching that front as well.
Well, we're going to have to see if that stops. If they're going to keep doing that, of course, that could be some of the problems, internal problems within the Revolutionary Guard Corps and within the regime itself, where one side is doing one thing and another side is doing another thing. We're going to find out if that continues. But if Iran keeps firing missiles, ballistic missiles, and drones into Israel or into any of the Gulf states while there is, quote, a ceasefire in place, well, then the ceasefire is going to fall apart. And markets won't respond very well to that. But I think that at this point we got all the forces over there, everything arrayed, that we could then hit them swiftly, quickly, in such a way that would probably get them right back to the negotiating table very quick, and maybe give whoever has agreed to this a little bit more leverage in forcing out some of those retrenched elements that still want to keep the war going.
And you've probably seen the headlines today as well that Russia reportedly is supplying Iran now with spy imagery of U.S. and Israeli targets. And what about Russia's role in all this, and China also, which we haven't heard too much about?
Both of them have been providing all sorts of things. Russia's been providing target intelligence. This is intelligence, high-grade imagery and other intelligence that is specifically used to target U.S. personnel in the Gulf, U.S. service members who are actually involved in the war itself. And so Russia is doing that. I would hope that becomes a discussion with Russia. I have heard this explanation. It's like, well, we provide that intelligence to the Ukrainians to hit Russia, and Russia provides that intelligence to Iran to hit us. I find that to be something of a false equivalency, but I have heard that sort of thinking. One of the things that came up is a report, very credible, that China, because they've taken out some of the petrochemical capabilities that Iran has to make its own ballistic missile propellant, that China had ships in there that was offloading ballistic missile propellant to help Iran's missile campaign. I hope that becomes a discussion. I hope that's something that we bring up with China directly. Hopefully, this will, hopefully in a month or so, this will all be in the rearview mirror. And if everything goes well, there will be substantial regime change of some sort within Iran, but that's yet to be seen.
Colonel, thank you very much for taking the call on this breaking news here today. That is retired U.S. Marine Corps Lieutenant Colonel Hal Kempfer, retired U.S. Marine Corps Intelligence Officer, National Security Analyst, and host of the Strat podcast, based right here in Southern California. Colonel, thank you again very, very much for joining us live here on the big news that President Trump has agreed to suspend attacks on Iran for 2 weeks, subject to the immediate reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. 790 KBC.
The expectation and the norm is to win, and that is what we will be able to do here. I believe in the power of UCLA.
It's a new day for UCLA football with new head coach Bob Chesney taking charge, and we need you to be a part of it. The right man is at the helm in Westwood, and the time is now for you to put your support behind the Bruins. UCLA football is ready to win, and we can't wait to see you this fall. Visit UCLABruins.com/tickets for more info on how to secure your seats for the 2026 season. Go Bruins!